Brain Boosters, the podcast for next-level thinking and growth. Listen to upgrade your brain 1 week at a time.
All right, let's talk about one of those mental shifts that, can literally change everything. It's this move from what we call perception to perspective. It sounds simple, right? But it's the difference between being stuck and being free. And you'll see that some of the greatest minds in history totally mastered this. So let's dive in.
So at the heart of this whole thing, you've got these two forces kind of battling it out in your mind. Okay, so think of it like this. On one side, you've got perception. That's your automatic pilot, right? It's that knee-jerk reaction, usually fueled by a little bit of fear, and it makes your world feel smaller. But then on the other side, there's perspective. And this one's different. It's not automatic at all. It's something you have to choose. It's that thoughtful response that opens things up, expands your world, and really gives you your freedom back. One keeps you in a box, the other hands you the key.
Okay, so you might be thinking, why is this such a big deal? Why does this one little shift actually matter in the real world? Well, the answer, it starts with a story of pressure that's almost impossible for most of us to imagine.
I mean, just try to imagine this. Spending 27 years locked away. 27 years. When Nelson Mandela was finally released, you can bet he was facing a ton of questions. But there was one that really cut through all the noise. After everything he went through, how on earth did he not hate his guards? And his answer? Well, it's a total masterclass in what we're talking about today.
And you really have to listen to the words he used here. He totally acknowledged his perception, that automatic default story that told him, every single guard is my enemy. But, and this is the key, he didn't stop there. He chose to look for something different. He chose a new perspective, and he focused on this one young guard who would secretly bring him a little extra food. He looked for a little bit of humanity, and because he looked, he found it.
And that right there, that's the whole game. That story just perfectly illustrates the core difference. Perception, well, it shrinks your world down to anger, to fear. It makes everything black and white, us versus them. But perspective, it does the exact opposite. It cracks things wide open, making room for understanding, for compassion, for a bit of wisdom.
Now, this idea isn't just for these epic, world-changing moments. It's also the secret ingredient to innovation. Let's take a look at a young Steve Jobs. He's 12 years old, right? He wants to build this thing called a frequency counter, but he doesn't have the parts. So what does a 12-year-old do? He looks up Bill Hewlett, the co-founder of HP, in the phone book, and he just decides to call him.
So can you imagine that moment? The phone is ringing, and for a second, Jobs just freezes. His perception, that automatic fear, just floods his brain, screaming, I'm just a kid. He's going to think I'm so stupid. But right there, in that tiny little pause, he did it. He shifted his perspective. He asked a totally new question. What if this is an opportunity? And that one little shift, man, it changed everything for him.
And get this, Bill Hewlett didn't just give him the parts, he gave him a summer job. That experience taught Jobs a lesson that pretty much defined his entire life, and it's captured perfectly in this quote. He realized the world isn't built by some superhumans or giants. It's built by regular people who just dared to ask. People who chose a perspective of what if instead of a perception of I can't.
So, here's the bottom line, really. Perception is what paralyzes you. It gets you stuck in that loop of, oh no, what if I fail? It just freezes you right where you are. But perspective flips the script. It asks, yeah, but what if I succeed? And that simple question, well, it's the key that opens doors you didn't even see.
Okay, that's great for them, but how do we actually do this? Especially in those moments when we mess up, when we fail. Well, for that, let's turn to Michael Jordan. So picture this, early in his career, he takes the final shot in a massive game, and he misses. He walks off that court, and his perception is just crushing him. All he can think is, I've failed my team, I let everybody down.
But then his coach, the legendary Phil Jackson, steps in. And he doesn't yell, he doesn't even console him. He does something way more powerful. He completely reframes the entire situation with this incredible shift in perspective. He literally turned what felt like a devastating failure into a moment of liberation. Jordan realized, okay, I lost, and it didn't kill me. And that meant he was suddenly free from the fear of it ever happening again.
And this really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's one thing to see these amazing stories, but how do we apply this in our own lives? How do we go from that gut reaction to a thoughtful response when we're facing our own challenges, big or small?
Well, it really boils down to a pretty simple 3-step process. First step, just pause.
That's it. You have to interrupt that automatic reaction. For Jordan, his coach was the pause button. Second step, ask. Ask a different question. Instead of why is this happening to me, try asking, okay, what can I learn from this? And finally, the third step, choose. You consciously choose a new angle, a more empowering way to look at it. And that right there, that's how you take your power back.
Okay, let's look at one last, really powerful example of what can happen when you practice this, when it becomes a habit. We all know Oprah Winfrey as a global icon, but before all that, she was fired from her job as a TV news anchor. Can you believe it? Her producer told her she was, and I quote, not fit for television. Now you can imagine, her initial perception was just total devastation.
But over time, she did the work. She shifted her perspective. She literally chose to tell herself a different story. And her version is just brilliant. She said, "They didn't fire me, they redirected me. It wasn't a rejection, it was a course correction. It was the universe pushing her toward the talk show format where her real gifts could shine." I mean, wow, what an incredible reframe.
Oprah's story is just the ultimate proof of this whole idea, right? By choosing her perspective, she managed to turn the sting of rejection into her life's purpose. She took what looked like a massive failure and turned it into the very foundation of her entire empire. It's just amazing.
So what happens when you start to make this a habit in your own life? Well, the benefits are huge. Seriously, you'll find you're calmer, less reactive, your relationships actually get better. Your ability to lead starts to rise. And maybe the best part, you become mentally free. Because you're no longer just reacting on emotion, you're responding with intention.
Look, if you remember just one thing from all of this, let it be this right here. Perception is the story your mind automatically tells you, usually written by fear. But perspective is the story you choose to believe. It's that simple. One is just a reaction. The other is a true act of power.
And that really brings us to the final question. And this one's for you. The next time you face a setback, a challenge, anything, what story are you going to tell yourself? What angle will you choose? Because right there, in that choice, that's where you'll find your freedom. Thanks so much for joining me.
Brain Boosters, the podcast for next level thinking and growth. Listen to upgrade your brain 1 week at a time.